Hi guys, doing very bad news coming out of France. President Macron wants to recognize Palestine by September 2025. Let's see the report and then talk about it.
And the United States have criticised the decision by President Macron of France to recognise a Palestinian state in September. In a post on social media, the US Secretary of State Marco Rubio strongly rejects Macron's plan to recognise Palestinian statehood and says this reckless decision only serves Hamas propaganda and sets back peace. The Israeli Prime Minister said the move would reward terrorism. But Saudi Arabia hailed President Macron's announcement as historic, and the Palestinian Authority and Hamas have also welcomed it. The latest figures from the MSF suggest that 1 in 4 children and pregnant women is now malnourished in Gaza City, with the situation getting worse every day.
I'm sure that information is 100% valid since the UN has not lied before, and UNRWA, its organization inside Gaza, has not been seen or found guilty with cooperating with Hamas. So of course, let's just take those figures as reliable numbers. That makes perfect sense.
Now to our Middle East correspondent Yolande Nell, who's in Jerusalem for us. Yolande, given the announcement by France, what difference does it make to how isolated Israel is, especially given that the US still stands with them on that?
I mean, certainly this will add to the feelings of growing international isolation that Israel has been facing in recent weeks. It is very heavily lobbied against its allies making such a move. The Palestinians, meanwhile, have been calling for such a move to be made for years. And you have already about 3/4 of the member states of the UN that recognize a sovereign Palestinian state on pre-1967 borders. But really, notably, not many countries in Western Europe. So, you know, Israel's always rejected this idea, saying it would be a unilateral move. But since those deadly attacks led by Hamas on the 7th of October 2023, the Israeli position has been...
So many of these people in this video look malnourished. It's ridiculous. Nobody looks starving. They look like they're pretty calm. They don't look targeted in any way. Wow, I'm so tired of this propaganda.
That to give recognition for a Palestinian state in such circumstances, that would be a reward for terrorism. And you have really, furious reaction coming out from different Israeli officials. The Israeli Prime Minister's office saying the Palestinians do not seek a state alongside Israel. They seek a state instead of Israel.
Yep.
And given the data that's coming out of Gaza about the level of malnutrition there, how much does this make a difference to that? Because, of course, ceasefire talks are still going nowhere. So, in a way, is this announcement by France a bit of a red herring when it comes to what the situation is for Palestinian people?
I mean, I think among the international community, there's been a lot of frustration about what's going on the ground, how they could try to set a path back for a long-term resolution of this decades-old Israel-Palestinian conflict and revive the so-called two-state solution, which is the long-time international formula for peace here.
They have hospitals where they can do this exact act at, yet they choose to do it on a table to show to the world that there's no other places that we can operate on children. It's all a part of their propaganda, yet I'm looking at these people, none of them looks malnourished.
There's been a lot of resistance, particularly from the US as well as Israel, to the idea of France and Saudi Arabia hosting a conference where they would try to put this back on the international agenda and encourage countries to make this step of recognizing an independent Palestinian state. For Palestinians, well, they say that, this is a way to overcome a long-time impasse in the talks. But Israel's always said that, it needs direct negotiations between them and the Palestinians to resolve their outstanding issues.
Yolande, thank you. That's our Middle East correspondent, Yolande Nell there. Well, here in the UK, the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, is under increasing pressure to follow France's lead and to recognise Palestine as a state. It comes as a cross-party group of MPs says the UK's actions in the conflict have often been, in their words, too little, too late. Our political correspondent, Damien Grammaticus, has more.
Starving civilians! That's the red line! Blocking humanitarian aid!
In Parliament Square this week, demonstrators who say Israel has crossed multiple red lines in Gaza. There have been similar protests in recent months in other European capitals. People calling for their governments to do more, including
Bunch of people with white guilt trying to please the Islamic community living in their country. Beautiful.
by officially recognising a Palestinian state. Last night, Sir Keir Starmer said, "The suffering and starvation unfolding in Gaza is unspeakable and indefensible."
No starvation is taking place in Gaza, especially not because of Israel, because Israel provides humanitarian aid in ridiculous amounts. More than 2 million tons of aid were entered into Gaza since October 7th, which is the equivalent of about 5,000 calories per person. Hamas, on the other hand, steals the aid and sells it for ridiculous prices. So if you want to blame anybody for people not getting food, blame Hamas.
He said statehood is the inalienable right of the Palestinian people, but indicated the UK won't recognise Palestine yet, not before a ceasefire, saying, "A ceasefire will put us on the path to the recognition of a Palestinian state and a two-state solution."
What a load of crap. A two-state solution isn't going to solve anything. We've offered a two-state solution time and time again, yet they kept refusing. 1937, 1947, 1967, 2000, 2005, 2008, they refused every single time. They never wanted to establish a Palestinian state. They were supposed to be the pawns used by the Islamic world to create a greater Islamic Khalifa. So they're not going to be settled. They need to be refugees for eternity. People don't get this, but France and the UK are doing this exact act because of the Muslims living in their country, because of the growing pressure in their country. In order to calm the situation down in their countries, this kind of action is required. It doesn't mean that Macron is necessarily agreeing with this, but in order to calm the situation in France, the chaos going on in the UK and France, then these two leaders are trying to take action, which is very stupid. Why would you reward terrorists with a state?
The UK has for many, many months been calling for a ceasefire, for Hamas to release its hostages, for Israel to allow unfettered aid flows. The UK's impotence to achieve any change on the ground has prompted an influential group of British MPs to say the government must now take a different approach. In its report on the conflict, Parliament's Foreign Affairs Committee says all its 11 MPs, Conservative, Labour and Liberal Democrat, believe there needs to be a Palestinian state to ensure a lasting peace.
They have a Palestinian state. It's in Jordan.
What divided members of the committee, though, was whether to recognise a Palestinian state now. Minority said that would not be helpful. The majority, though, voted to say that the UK should recognise a Palestinian state now, while there was still one to recognise, and that would signal the UK's desire to work towards a two-state solution.
I wonder how many of those majority are Muslim.
Those in favour of immediate action say the UK now needs to follow France's lead. Emmanuel Macron confirmed his country will recognise Palestine later this year, saying it's necessary if peace is to be achieved.
The reality is that what should be the Palestinian territory is getting smaller and smaller all of the time, and that is just, for me, creating a sense of urgency around the need for the UK to make a statement and recognise Palestine while there's still a state to recognise.
It's not getting smaller and smaller. It remained the same since 2005, but you had another peace offer that was put on the table that you rejected. A two-state solution isn't going to solve shit. They're just trying to calm the situation in their countries because of the radical Islamists going crazy and doing protests and breaking things and looting stuff. It's going to be disastrous to reward terrorism with a state. They now understand that if they want to get stuff, it's perfectly fine to kidnap people, kill children, behead people. That's perfectly acceptable. The real native people with the real claim to the state of Israel are the Jewish people. They have one of the strongest claims in the world to their indigenous homeland. The Palestinians have no such things. So if you want to solve this problem, first of all, their leadership needs to change. Second of all, I support the Palestinian Emirates plan, which will be governed by tribes. It's going to work exactly the same way as in the UAE, in Kuwait, in Saudi, in Qatar. Is it going to be perfect? No. But if it's going to be this tribal system and not democracy, which people still think that these people can be governed by democracy, you are heavily mistaken. Put them back in their tribal form and enjoy long-lasting peace. Thank you so much for watching this video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. If you'd like to support me financially, you can do that using Buy Me Coffee or Patreon down in the links below and help me build this beautiful studio. Please join the Discord in the link below. You can also become a YouTube member and enjoy specific YouTube perks. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you again in the next video. Bye-bye.